We are going to wrap up our teaching series called Sacred Rhythms that we started at the beginning of the year. And the first week we talked about fasting. We talked about solitude. We talked about prayer. We talked about simplicity. Last week we talked about confession. We've talked about a lot of different things. And these are practices. Like these are habits that we do in order to make room for God and in order to give God opportunities to move in our life. We all want to feel more spiritual. We all want to feel stronger. We all want to be mature. We all want to be godly. But sometimes we don't practice. It's like me, wanting to be good at golf, but I don't practice. That's a real scenario. I'm like, I don't understand. Well, it's because I don't play. And I definitely don't practice. So we can't just wake up and be where we want to be. We have to have habits. We have to have practices. We have to actually do things. Now, these things don't make us mature automatically. That's called religion. It doesn't save us, doesn't send us to heaven. You can pray all day, every day. You can go spend time alone. You can fast and get all skinny and be like, I'm doing it for the Lord, and it doesn't make you mature. If you think that in and of itself sends you to heaven or makes you better than people or more spiritual, then the point is missed. It gives God room to speak into our lives. And so you can catch up on our website, all the messages. But I want to kind of tie a little bow around this whole series. And I just want to talk about discipleship and why these things matter. This could have been week one, could have set the whole thing up. But I want to do it at the end. I want us all to understand, like, this is why we've been talking about this. So Matthew 22, we read this scripture, I think, last week or the week before. But Jesus said, someone asked him, what's the greatest commandment? And he said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind. Okay, so what he didn't say is to love the Lord your God with a little bit of your heart, with some of your soul, and with most of your mind. Okay, he didn't say just you can just do a little bit. It was all in. It was 100% of your heart, 100% of your soul, 100% of your minds. God is not asking us for just something. He's asking us for everything. It's all in. And I know some of you are like this. I can be like this. When I want to do something, I go all in. Like when I played fantasy football, I don't play it anymore because I got too into it, Or it's some of the reasons I don't play golf because I get too into it. When I learned how to fly fish, I bought a DVD off of Amazon. It came with and I watched it, and then I started studying fish. This is the level. I would practice my cast in my front yard. I'm sure the neighbor's like, what's wrong with that guy, And it's the way Ash and I both tend to be. We tend to obsess over the things that we love or that we get into. We go, like she loves plants. She has people that she calls in other parts of the country who she's never met, and they talk about plants. She counsels people about plants. She's a plant mentor. Like she does these things. She gets obsessive. She starts talking. Just yesterday, she was talking to me about a plant. And I'm like, I don't care. But she does. She's into it. That song, the old hymn, I surrender all. I surrender all. It wouldn't be the same song. It wouldn't have the same feeling if it was I surrender a little bit, or I surrender 30%. It would be like, what kind of song, what kind of hymn is this? Because God requires that we go all in. And I know some of you are like this too. When you diet or whatever, you're just so strict, you go all in. Or when it's hunting. So some of you like to hunt, like Brother Logan on the front row over here. I mean, you should see him when he goes hunting. I'm sure he's got face paint on. And I've seen some of you at Razorback games. You're a different person. You won't lift your hands in church, but you're painting your body, red and screaming and hollering and cussing out the refs and stuff, because you're all in. You want 100%. Some of you for Christmas, you have a condition. You like Christmas a little. It's a little bit too much. This idea of like just going all out. God loves that kind of commitment. He loves people that are 100% committed. And no one really likes fair weather fans. I like this team when they're good, and when they're not good anymore, I don't like this team anymore. We're committed regardless of the weather. We're committed regardless of anything. We're 100% committed. And in Luke chapter 14, it says this, verse 25. It says, large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, now bear with me here, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Now, when you read that, and if you don't read it a little bit into the context and with Jesus' use of hyperbole, where he would exaggerate, to prove a point, you could be like, okay, I didn't think that we could hate people. I'm supposed to hate my mom. I like my mom. Don't talk about my mom, I'm supposed to hate my dad, my siblings. I'm supposed to hate myself, right? Jesus is saying, in light of the commitment that you need to have for me, it pales in comparison to everything else. Another translation, the New Living Translation, says it like this. If you want to be my disciple, you must by comparison hate everyone else. Your father, mother, wife, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even your own life. It's not really telling us to hate. We know that hating is sin, and we don't hate, we love. But what Jesus is saying here is that our love for our friends and our families and anyone else, even our own desires, our own life, should appear as hate compared to our love and commitment to Jesus. In other words, our love for God should be loud and great, and God is seeking people with undivided hearts, whole hearts towards him. So that's what being a disciple is. Well, what is that? Even the word disciple, let's just talk about that for a second. What is a disciple? The term Christian in the New Testament is only used 3 times. Think about how often we say Christian. It's only used 3 times. But the word disciple is used 269 times, and it means this. It means simply a learner or student. That's what a disciple means. It's someone who adheres to, follows the teachings of another person. Rabbis, Jewish rabbis, had disciples. Jesus was a rabbi. This word disciple, it's a noun. It's not a verb. Something that you become. A disciple is also, write this down if you're taking notes, someone who follows someone in order to become like them. And this is why we've been doing a whole teaching series for weeks about spiritual habits and practices, sacred rhythms. Because if you can get rhythms into your life, you're going to become like it's to become like Jesus. That's the goal. It's not just to go, I'm more disciplined, even though that's a great byproduct. It's to become like Jesus. John Mark Comer, who wrote a fantastic book called Practicing the Way, defines discipleship. He actually calls it apprenticeship. He says it's like this: to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do as Jesus did. And I think that's a really awesome way to view discipleship. I want to be with Jesus, to be with God, alone with God, solitude with God. I want to practice. I want to read the Bible. But I want to become like Jesus. I don't want it to be just head knowledge. And then I want to do what he did. WWJD, remember those bracelets? What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do if he were me? What would Jesus do at my workplace if he were me? On my sports teams? What would Jesus do? How would he walk into a room? Who would he talk to? How would he talk to them? What would Jesus' facial expressions be? How would he respond to a joke that I don't know if I should laugh or not? How would he serve in a church? What would his generosity be like? What would Jesus do? So the problem is we're already being discipled. Like if you're like, okay, today marks the day I'm going to start being discipled by Jesus. I want to be a disciple. Well, you've already been discipled. So there's a little bit of unlearning that has to happen because we've already been being shaped. So I wrote a few notes about what we're being shaped by. Number one is this. We're being shaped by our beliefs, like our current beliefs. A.W. Tozer says this: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What comes into your mind when you think about God? You know, some of you are like, well, it's a loving, caring, gracious God. Thumbs up. But others of you, because of your past experiences with church or preachers or church hurt or whatever, father figures or parents or the way you were raised, it could be, well, that he's mad at me or impatient or whatever. So we're shaped by our beliefs. John 8, verse 31 and 32 says, to the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Our beliefs about God are very important. This is why it's so important to come to church on a regular basis, for it to be a priority. Because whoever's teaching, me or some of the other guys that teach here, whoever's teaching, it's truth. That's why it's important to read our Bibles. That's why it's important to be involved in a small group if you have the opportunity to do that. It's just the more that we can get truth into our brains, into our hearts, and meditate on it and apply it, the more that we do that, we have this base knowledge of who God is and who Jesus is and what we're supposed to do and what he stands for. I know it's so simple, but it's so important because so much of our lives has been shaped in a wrong direction because of other things and investments and inputs into our mind and to our heart. So the way that we think about something like money, okay, like if we think, if our belief is like, if I have more money, I'll be happier, which is what most people think, then we might do things that we don't need to do to get more money, thinking that it will make us happier. See how our thoughts and our beliefs, they shape us. We can end up having way more problems as we try to make more money and build more wealth. But if we have a mindset of wealth as a generous heart, okay, if I can make more money, I can be more generous, I can be at more peace, I can give more. That's the way that our thoughts and our beliefs dictate the way that we will behave. So it's important that we submit to the teachings of the Bible, that we attend church faithfully. Next week, we're starting a 8-week teaching on the book of James. We're going to go through the book of James. We're going to have reading plans for you. So, that's important. We're going to walk through a book. We're going to try to gain as much as we can, knowledge, application about the book of James. Number 2, we're also shaped by our habits. And this is what we've been talking about. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we've been talking about it, but we become what we do. We become what we do. If I can get you to practice more, then you're all of a sudden going to feel more mature. You're going to feel closer to the Lord. That's just what's going to happen. Is if we can get ourselves into habits of prayer and confession, and it's just going to make a huge difference in our spiritual life. Matthew 7, verse 26, but everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. We got to put them into practice. We can't just be hearers of the word. We have to be doers of the word. We have to put these things into practice. Number 3, we're also shaped by our culture. I mean, we were born into a world at war spiritually. We were born into a world of evil. We were born into a life. It's really hard to be a godly person, and it's really easy to be tempted and to sin. This is the world we were born into. And I know you all know that. But to acknowledge it, go, okay, well, whether I realize it or not, I'm being shaped by the world around me. So I have to be really strong. I have to be really intentional. I have to be really aware that that's happening. And this is true of our ethnicity, our nationality, our city, hometown, where we came from. I mean, you think you'd be a Razorback fan if you grew up in New York City? You know what I mean? You'd be like, what, a pig? You know, like, it would just be odd to you. Woo! You know, I'd be like, what? No thanks, you know, or whatever. It's because it's where a lot of us, we grew up here. It's our culture. We're shaped by our culture. Number 4, we're shaped by our relationships. Galatians 5:7 says this, you were running a good race. Now check this out. Who cut in on you to keep you from obeying the truth? Sometimes it's a who. And often we can be like, man, the devil's just so busy in my life. I'm just so sick of this spiritual warfare. It's an attack, it's a spiritual attack. And in all reality, it's who you're hanging out with. It's who we've surrounded ourselves with. It's important that we surround ourselves with the right people. Our main influences in our life. And not blame it on the devil, right? How many of you, this is weird, but how many of you keep your ketchup in the refrigerator? Would you raise your hand? Okay, that's what I thought. How many of you keep it room temperature because you have a life hack and you know what's best? See, this might be the most important thing you learned today. We had a major issue in our marriage because I grew up, we didn't keep our ketchup in the refrigerator. I thought that's how everyone lived. You ever have things like that? We're like, I thought everybody lived this way. Smart and wise and, adventurous. Well, Ashley, grew up like most of you, normal people. They grew up with the ketchup in the refrigerator and it makes your food cold and all that stuff, Who wants to eat hot French fries with cold ketchup? And I just want you to go with me here for a second. We'll get back to the Bible and how, all that stuff here in a minute. I just want you to go with me. When you go to a restaurant, they're not serving you cold ketchup. I worked at restaurants. It's on the table. It's room temperature. It goes with the food. It's not cold, crisp, cold, frigid ketchup with your hot food. So that's the way I grew up. You know what I mean? Just pray about it this week, okay? Just pray about it. But, we're shaped by the way, our relationships and the way that I don't know. My parents probably grew up that way and they passed it on to me, But think about our family of origin, Don't want to pick on them too hard, but there's some great things that have been passed down. There might be some things that are not so great. So we have to think about that because we've been shaped by that, we have to break some of those things, those patterns. We are who we surround ourselves with. We are like chameleons, just naturally. We shape to our environment and to the people that we're around, the way we dress, the way we vote, the way we spend money, everything that we like. A lot of it is influenced by the people that we surround ourselves with. And this is why Jesus used hyperbole here. He's saying that you need to hate your family in the comparison to your love for God. So we're already being formed, we're already being discipled, we're already being shaped. We can acknowledge those things, and then now we can start to just view our life and the way that we follow Jesus and be discipled and become like Jesus, and that's what we want to do. We want to have this view of God as we live each day. It's not just about going to heaven, and that's great, can't wait. It's not just a transaction. When we give our hearts to the Lord, when we receive salvation, it is for transformation. We want to be transformed into becoming more like Jesus. So this is not easy. And it's why a lot of people don't do it. So, but it is the reason that we've been talking about the things we've been talking about in this series. So we want to become like Jesus. And it's possible. So I'm going to give you a few ways that we can do that. What does becoming like Jesus require? And please, just try not to think that this is unattainable. I know we'll never be perfect. We'll never be exactly like Jesus. But what else do we have to live for? Than to try our best to be like him and to love like he loved, forgive like he forgave, to be compassionate, to serve people, to love people. So number one, if you're taking notes, write this down. If you're ready, say I'm ready. Dr. Todd, you all right over there? Yeah. Number one, becoming like Jesus requires intentionality. Intentionality. Matthew 6:19. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Our spiritual growth is our responsibility. It's cool to get on the podcast, and it's cool to like your church. It's great to listen to worship music. All those things help, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility. My spiritual growth, it's my responsibility. I want more mentors in my life, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility when I stand before Jesus that my spiritual growth, it's on me. I have to make decisions. It's on you. You got to make decisions. You have to shape your whole life around this if you really are serious about it. We all have, dreams and desires, and we all want to be the best, and we want to be whatever we want to be, but if we don't have an intentional plan, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And nobody wakes up when they're 60 years old or whatever age, and goes, you know what? I'm free from fear. I don't worry. I love people like Jesus. I'm so like Jesus. It doesn't just happen. We don't grow in the Lord by accident. So we have to make a plan. We have to have a plan for spiritual growth, which is why we've been talking about what we've talked about. Some people call it a rule of life. The ancients called it a rule of life. Some of our Christian fathers back in the day, they had it was called a rule of life, or some people called it a way of life, where they would it was like a law. It was like a rule. I'm going to get up at this time. I'm going to spend 20 minutes doing this, reading the Bible, prayer. On this day, I'm taking a Sabbath. It's just a plan. And I know I have a plan, but things don't always go as planned. So there's flexibility. God understands our life, but we have habits and structure. Number 2, becoming like Jesus requires time. Requires time. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. We're so used to everything being so instant. It's crazy how much is so instant. Like, I won't even go to restaurants anymore if I can't order it on an app and it's ready for me. I just want to go, thanks. I want it fast, now, quick. Eugene Peterson, he wrote the message, or he translated the Bible into the Message translation, which is really a paraphrase. He was a pastor. He wrote several books. One of the books he wrote was called Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And it was he titled it that from a quote from a German philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. And I'm just going to read it to you. The essential thing in heaven and earth is that there should be long obedience in the same direction. There thereby results, and has always resulted in the long run, something which has made life worth living. It's long obedience in the same direction. It's consistency over time. As we continue to do what we know we're supposed to do, we will build this life. It's like legacy. You don't leave a legacy overnight. You don't build a legacy overnight. It's over time. We're in the long game. And if you could just see it that way. It's like I have never run a marathon. I know that probably some of you have. But if I decided I'm going to run a marathon, and I went out tomorrow and tried to run a marathon, you'd see me on the side of MLK, passed out. You'd be like, that looks like Pastor Jason on the side of the road next to Cane's or whatever, It's not going to happen. I have to start training. And I can't do it like that. Our life with God, our discipleship journey is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Colossians 2, verse 7 says this, let your roots grow down into him. Let your roots, what roots? Your spiritual roots. And let your lives be built on him, Jesus. Then your faith will grow. It says your faith will grow after your roots go down in him. This is why it's so important to be consistent and to not get discouraged when we don't feel like we're as strong as we should be. We get discouraged. It says, then your faith will grow strong in the truth you were taught, and you will overflow with thankfulness. Sometimes we got to dig up old roots, and we got to grow some new, strong, godly roots. And I just want to encourage you. I don't know every single one of you in your journey. Here's what I know. I know a lot of you in the room today. You're doing your best. And you're growing in the Lord, and you're getting stronger every single day. You're getting stronger every week. And I just want to encourage you to keep going. God is proud of you. You are doing all that you know to do. You're getting stronger. You're getting more mature. God is shaping you and forming you and molding you. Some of you dads in the room, this is everything. You want to be able to pass on to your children the godly principles and values. You're doing it. So don't get discouraged. The moms in the room, the ladies in the room, everybody, teenagers, college students, God is shaping you. It's not an overnight thing. It's like, I've told both my boys, because they've started lifting weights and stuff. I'm like, you just watch. You watch. You may be discouraged right now, but it's going to happen. And all of a sudden you're going to be like, because it's just going to happen. Because if you just can be consistent, the fruit is going to show. But you can't have fruits without roots. Let your life be built deep. And every single day, every single week, every single year, if you can just stay consistent. Stay consistent with church. Stay consistent with learning about God, about worship, reading the Bible. It's so overwhelming, isn't it? It's like, I need to read the Bible real fast. And I saw this on TikTok. They read the Bible in a year. I need to read the Bible in a year. There's no scripture that says you have to read the Bible in a year. I read slow. Let your roots grow deep. Whatever you do, let God take you on this discipleship journey and be encouraged that you're growing in the Lord. Number 3, becoming like Jesus requires sacrifice. And this is where a lot of people go, peace out. I don't do sacrifice. Well, that's a problem. Now, the other problem is, how's that working for you? You know what I mean? How's that working for you when you don't sacrifice anything, when you live for yourself? I have never met a peaceful, happy, selfish person. Because in the end, when we sacrifice and we are unselfish and we serve others, that is what makes us fulfilled and happy. Luke 9, verse 23. Then he said that whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross daily, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their very self? And I wonder sometimes in churches all around the world, if in some churches, people think they are following Jesus, but in reality, they've invited Jesus to follow them. Like, yeah, bless what I do. Bless my family. Bless my success. Bless my job, my career. Yeah, come and God wants us to be blessed. There's nothing wrong with asking God to bless you, but if that's all, so you're not really following Jesus. You're using Jesus to bless your life. It's like, Jesus, take the wheel. Never mind. Just ride shotgun and hand me snacks, A much worse country song, right? But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's God first. And then one of the most dangerous questions you can ask is, God, what do you want me to do with my life? When you really submit your will to the will of God? It feels like a dangerous question. Yet, what's more dangerous is never asking that question. To just live for yourself. To just live the way you want, you know. And I've been there. I've done that. It didn't work for me. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German Lutheran pastor. He was very vocal against Hitler and the Nazis, and he got put in a concentration camp for a year and a half. But he wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship. And he said, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. Not literally die, but to die to themselves. This is the hardest thing about following Jesus, is killing your selfish desires. To understanding the balance of, as I die to myself, then I actually will be happy. Because it is more of a joy to serve and to sacrifice than it is to hoard and to keep and to live for myself. Nobody on their deathbed has ever thought, I should have been more selfish. If anything, they think, I should have served more. I should have sacrificed more. I should have loved. I should have forgave. I should have. So we have the beauty of being able to reverse engineer. We can think about what we want to leave, the legacy we want to leave, and we can just run it back. And we can start to live now the way that we want to be remembered. We can live now the way that we feel like we're called to. And then number 4, as we close, becoming like Jesus requires consecration. And what that means is to be set apart. Like we have to be set apart. We can't think the way normal people think. We can't talk the way normal people talk. We can't view ourselves like we're normal. Doesn't mean we're better. I'm just saying it's a different way of life. We are not normal. If you are a believer, if you are a disciple, you are not normal. You are countercultural. So we've all been formed. Another way to say it was we've all been malformed. If we don't have an intentional plan, we're going to be formed in the wrong direction. We're going to be shaped in the wrong way. So we have to be set apart. We have to be consecrated. We have to be different. Joshua, chapter 3, verse 5, Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Everybody wants the amazing things. It's like, yeah, sign me up. I'll take amazing things. I'm down. Give me those amazing things. But the consecration, the sacrifice, right? It's a beautiful thing. This life that God has called us to. It's amazing. But we have to consecrate ourselves. It's easy to buy in, but it's hard to sell out. To set ourselves apart. To be 100% committed. And I just want to, as we wrap up this series, we talked about all these spiritual habits. I think it's important that we remember this is the reason. These habits and these practices and these commands and these things that we see, it's to lead us into becoming more like Jesus. To be loving like him, to do as he did. Let's bow our heads. I want to pray for you.